Karkamış is located on a strategic crossing of the Euphrates. So this became the main seat of empire with responsibility for all the Syrian affairs, so to say.
Buranın çok önemli bir merkez olduğunu biliyoruz. Çok fazla buluntu buluyoruz.
Anadolu hiyeroglif yazısı, Anadolu'da kurulan ilk imparatorluk olan Hititlerin kuruluşuyla birlikte icat edilmiştir.
Karkamış Höyük'teyiz. Burası Fırat Nehri'nin kıyısında yaklaşık 100 hektarlık bir alana yayılmış bir antik kente ev sahipliği yapıyor. Antik kentin %65'lik alanı günümüzde Türkiye sınırları içerisinde yer alırken %35 kadarı da Suriye topraklarında yer alıyor. Bu alanda yapılan çalışmalarda Türk-İtalyan kazı ekibi olarak İstanbul Üniversitesi, Bologna Üniversitesi ve Gaziantep Üniversitesi ortaklığıyla çalışmaları sürdürüyoruz. Alandaki çalışmaların merkezinde demir çağına tarihlendirilen ve aşağı saray alanı olarak isimlendirilen saray alanı mevcut. Saray alanının çevresinde bulunan BB, GG ve LL açmalarında da çalışmalar devam ediyor. Ayrıca saray alanının güneyinde bulunan su kapısı da güncel çalışmaların sürdürüldüğü alanlardan. Karkamış Höyük'te bulunan antik kent çok uzun yıllar boyunca iskan edilmiş, kesintisiz olarak iskan edilmiş bir merkez. Kalkolitik dönemde biz ilk yerleşim izlerine rastlıyoruz. Roma döneminde kentin büyük bir ölçüde küçüldüğü biliniyor ancak devam ediyor. Orta Çağ'da İslami döneme kadar da burada iskan kesintisiz olarak sürdürülüyor. Ancak en geniş sınırlarına ulaştığı ve en önemli buluntuları verdiği dönem Demir Çağı, özellikle Geç Hitit ve Yeni Asur dönemleri. Özellikle Geç Hitit döneminde biz hem yazılı belgeler açısından buranın çok önemli bir merkez olduğunu biliyoruz. Çok fazla buluntu buluyoruz. Hem de buranın Hitit İmparatorluğu'nun politik ve kültürel olarak mirasını devam ettiren adeta bir başkent gibi konumlandığını biliyoruz.
Karkamış is located on a strategic crossing of the Euphrates. Actually, this is one of the few fords where this large river could be crossed quite easily. So this is one of the reasons why it was so important. But of course, it's also at the crossing of different regions. It is south of the Terius, which marks the Taurus Ranges, basically separates Anatolia from Syria. But it's also between upper Mesopotamia and the northern Levant, so the area between the coast and this huge river. So these different ecological areas are at the heart of the importance of Karkamış. Karkamış is a special site, is a most important historical site because in certain periods of its history it had a unique political and economic role. So this makes this site one of the most important archaeological sites in Turkey and in the Middle East in general. Because Karkamış was, after the Emperor Suppiluliuma I, the great king of the Hittites, took it in around the middle of the 14th century BC, it became the main city of the empire after the capital Hattusha in the Çorum area. So this became the main city of empire with responsibility for all the Syrian affairs, so to say. The ruling dynasty at Karkamış was directly linked to the family of a great king. Basically, it was his offspring, his children ruling here. And the situation went on until the empire fell. When the empire fell, the kings of Karkamış took for themselves the title Great Kings of Karkamış, and they started an independent dynasty, which in the end was included within the Assyrian Empire. Of course, these different periods that you have at the site, which are represented by different material remains, they must be set within larger historical periods. So, at the same time, you have at the time of the Amorite dynasties in Syria, one was in Karkamış. We have some inscriptions. We say the Lim dynasty, so they were bound by dynastic linkages to other royal courts in the area at the beginning of the second millennium BC, what we say the Middle Bronze Age. Then, of course, you have the Mitanni Empire, including Karkamış, as a not especially important city, and then the Hittite Empire, the age of the Neo-Hittite states, the Assyrian domination for 1 century. The Neo-Babylonian domination was actually a period in which Karkamış basically dropped completely in importance. This became a very insignificant site until the city was refounded in Hellenistic times with a new name. It was no more called Karkamış, but Europos, which in the Roman Empire time became what we today would call an ilçe, a provincial town. So in 717 BC, the Assyrian king Sargon II found an excuse. It was obviously an excuse because he reproached the Karkamyshan king, who was one of his allies and subjects, to have corresponded with Mita of Mushki, so King Midas of Phrygia, and for this treason, you would say, he conquered the city. But basically, it was clear the underlying reason, because in that same year, with an enormous booty, which he extracted from Karkamış in terms of precious metals, hundreds of kilos of silver and gold, he financed the construction of his new capital in Dusharuk, in modern Khorsabad, just northeast of Nineveh, of Mosul. And from that time, for around 1 century, Karkamış remained as an Assyrian province.
Anadolu hiyeroglif yazısı, Anadolu'da kurulan ilk imparatorluk olan Hititlerin kuruluşuyla birlikte icat edilmiştir. Anadolu ve Suriye bölgesinde yaklaşık 1000 yıl boyunca kullanılmıştır. Hitit devletinin iki yazı sisteminden bir tanesidir. Milattan önce 17. yüzyıl ortalarında tarihlendirilen mühür ve mühür baskılarının okumalarında Anadolu hiyeroglif yazısını görüyoruz ve bunlar genelde isimler, ünvanlar ve meslekler olarak karşımıza çıkıyor. 13. yüzyıl itibariyle de bu yazı sistemini yazıtlar üzerinde görüyoruz. Bu yazıtlarda genellikle idari, siyasi ve kralın icraatini aktaran yazıtlardır. Milattan önce 12. yüzyılın başlarında Hitit devletinin sona ermesiyle, yıkılmasıyla birlikte geç Hitit krallıklarını Anadolu ve Suriye bölgesinde görüyoruz ve bu yazı sistemini geç Hitit krallıklarının kullandığını biliyoruz. Karkamış kenti bu geç Hitit krallıklarının en önemli merkezlerinden bir tanesidir.
We start with the Late Bronze II, as we say, which is the Hittite imperial period, when we found a building which was called by them the House of the Seal. And actually we found hundreds, like around 600 of tiny clay lamps impressed with seals, so what we call sealing. And they of course, they bear the impression of the seal. The seal, we get the imagery, but also we get the inscription and the title of the official to whom the seal belonged. So this created a map of the Karkamış administration in Hittite imperial times, which is impossibly important from an historical point of view. Hasan Peker, the Hittitologist of this expedition, he read through all the titles of these officials and reconstructed a web of historical relations, which is so important not only for this region, but in general for Near Eastern history. Ama burası Nadia lazım. Yoksa bak, taş burası kırılmış.
Quindi c'erano gli spaghi.
L'ho scavato diverso adesso, l'ho scavato da davanti.
Cioè, possiamo scavare da qua?
Sì. Sì, no, qui non è così che...
No, sì, non è così intorno di qua. Ma dice magari l'intorno è questo più lato.
Sì.
Poi nel senso, se questa è una base di colonna, sopra ci sarà stata una colonna.
Però dobbiamo controllare questa cosa. Per esempio qua.
Qua secondo me possiamo vedere.
Esatto. La ceramica dai, mettiamola via che fa un brutto effetto. So starting from this period, then you have the reconstructions of the city following the same layout. So even in what was once called the Dark Age, which is not dark anymore, which we call Iron One, so the period following the fall of the empire, we have new buildings on top of the old ones, but having the same functions. So we have 70 impressions out of 100 belonging to a seal of a noble woman, which is also very unusual, but also very interesting. It just tells you about how open was society at the time. And then, of course, the age of these huge monumental complexes came, what we call the Hittite state of Karkamış, when they had these huge complexes made for public gatherings. So this is why we say archaeology of performance. These reliefs that you admire in Ankara and in part in place here through the new discoveries, they required an action from the viewer. This is clear. It's not just our interpretation. The inscriptions say that viewers should perform a series of actions in front of these reliefs. So, as we say, reliefs have agency. They are in dialogue with you, they require an action from you, and they also perform an action over you. So, as you can see, this is a very complex visual environment. The reliefs were on the outside of the buildings, in open spaces, open areas, in plazas. And actually now we opened a new research team in these last years because we understood that the famous plaza of Karkamış, just in front of a great staircase, was of course a religious focus, a civic focus, but it was not the only one. So the King's Gate, as Woolley called it, and from which many sculptures were recovered, mostly by Woolley, but also from us, some complete slabs, the King's Gate was not leading into the plaza, actually was leading from the plaza into what we think was another palatial complex. So not just the palace that we uncovered in the past years, but we think there are more around a big open area. And I think the first results confirm this interpretation. So it will be very interesting in the future to see how this public area was organized.
Here we are within the Katua Palace, which is the main palace of the king of Karkamış during the Iron II period in the 10th and 9th century. And this palace was, of course, a monumental building that was also reused in later periods. When the Assyrian came, Sargon, the Assyrian king, came, he also rebuilt this palace and make his home here. So you can see here different levels and different views of this palace, different also floors. For example, the floor over there with these all small stone pebble stones, it belongs to the Assyrian period. So it testifies the continuous reuse of this monumental area across times. Examples of palaces like this one were found in many different other sites in the area, in this region. For example, at Deltainat or Dincirli, where they found similar palaces and temples decorated with these orthostats, with, of course, different styles, because each city had a different style, a different workshop producing these kind of monuments and orthostats. But of course, it testifies a regional koine, where these kings wanted to express their power through monuments and reliefs.
Quando fai le foto lì, fai le foto anche del taglio qua, che poi vai contro il pavimento.
Va bene. E tra l'altro mi veniva quasi il dubbio che quella roba lì fosse collegata alla fornace.
Sì, può essere pure. Diciamo così. Perché comunque questo non è pavimento.
No, quello è ancora da togliere.
Infatti.
Cioè la quota, guarda, la quota a cui stiamo scendendo è questa.
Sì, è quella lì.
E comunque sotto non c'è un piano qui. Qui c'è tipo un crollo.
Dammi un po' di una travola.
Non so, c'erano tutte le operai.
Tipo, lo scemebu.
Non sono uguali queste e
No,
queste?
no, assolutamente.
Questo è ancora grigio.
No, Vito. Bullar del scemè.
Secondo me è più in basso.
No, ma sono tutti piani.
No, lo so, però almeno uno va seguito in modo...
Alıyor son, orası aynı. Ferin alanda, döşeme.
Evet.
Döşeme bence bu. Tamam, aşağıdaki bu tabaka var. Ama döşeme bunlar. Bu parçalar kalacağız. Evet. Kiremitle. Victoria fotoğraf çıkar, sonra Victoria alıyor. So this year we decided to open a new area in Karkamış to the south of the main palatial area because we thought there could be more palaces. So we opened this trench among our areas. And in fact, on the bottom of a Hellenistic pit, you have this refuse pit cutting through layers. We discovered this round base inscribed in hieroglyphs, which Saint-Pécaire could read and date to the 10th century BC. Actually, the contents are very interesting. This is a dedicatory inscription, as we say. So it commemorates, it remembers the placing of a divine statue on top of this basis. Whether we will find deeper on the statue, we cannot say now, of course. There used to be a statue on top of this base. But then, of course, where it is, we cannot say. But the base remembers this act. So it's a dedicatory, it's a votive inscription. It's not probably, well, Hassan could only read this part, but it's not an historical inscription, it seems. Anyway, the contents are incredibly interesting because they reveal a new chapter in the history of religion for ancient Karkamış. So this is actually a major find. Very few of this kind, and actually it's very complete. But it's also very interesting. The layer in which we are digging now dates to the 7th century BC, a time when the city was under the control of the Assyrians. So the Assyrians, they didn't like earlier systems of communications, whether visual, like reliefs, or epigraphical inscriptions. So they covered them, if not removing or destroying them altogether. In this case, this column, this is why we have to be so careful. We noticed that, yes, the column is in place, the column base or whatever, the base is in place, but it was plastered. So this is only if you go very slowly, you can notice these details. So at the very end of the life of these objects, it was not visible, the inscription, because it was covered by a plaster layer. So they reused it as a base, but they didn't want to see these things. Of course, here we don't see the plaster because it was removed in the pit, in the Hellenistic pit. So it was gone. But here, the layer is intact. We noticed this trace. So now we are going first to dig the column with the Assyrian plaster. Then when we reach the original Hittite level, we will remove the plaster and open the full inscription. So this is how we work. This is why you cannot go slow. This is why even small details tell you a lot about history. This is so important. Archaeology is not about finds, it's about understanding the past, understanding the dynamics of the human relations with the environment and the society they built. This is the fact. Of course, this is a major find, but that's not the point. The point is observing the relations of this find within its context to understand the history. And of course, this thin layer of mud tells you a lot about politics, about the conquest of Karkamış, about things were seen differently by the conquerors. So this is so important. History is in the details, is not in the single finds. So this find in this context tells you a complete story. This find out of context, like for example, if you find it, the police finds it in a kazı, in an illegal excavation, all these details will be lost. So most of the history of this object will be lost. This is the sense of archaeology.
The excavation here by the Turkish-Italian archaeological expedition started in 2012, continued in 2013, and then was resumed this year in 2025. The aim is to understand the evolution of the gate throughout the Iron Age and possibly even in earlier periods. The importance of the water gate also includes the fact that was, as the other main gates of access to the city, was decorated with different reliefs and orthostats. The gate actually was first excavated by the British Museum in the early 20th century. During those excavations, most of the gate was uncovered with different orthostats and reliefs decorated its layout. Both the British and Turkish-Italian excavation demonstrated that the gate was not only used during the Iron Age, but also much earlier. In fact, earlier structures belonging to possibly a late Bronze Age gate were uncovered uncovered just outside of it. Moreover, an earlier late Bronze Age one, so pre-Hittite storage room has been excavated in 2013. The excavation in the room uncovered complete storage vessels crushed on the floor, filled with grains and of barley and wheat.
So this is area GG. This area we opened last year, and we dug a sequence belonging to the Achaemenid period. You can see here this pitos. This is a functional jar used during the Achaemenid period with this thatch floor, pebble floor. And below this sequence of Achaemenid period, we discovered a huge mud brick wall. This belongs to the Assyrian period, so you can see here at the bottom of the area over there. So the aim of this campaign is to reach the same level in this huge area and to understand better the function of this huge monumental building belonging to the Assyrian period. At the same time, we are also trying to understand what there is underneath the Assyrian building with a small sounding where we reach the New Hittite period, so Iron II period, and likely we will also reach earlier period below this level. So these are the main aim for this campaign in area GG.
Kültür ve Turizm Bakanlığı tarafından Geleceğe Miras projesi kapsamında 2024 yılında Profesör Doktor Hasan Peker başkanlığında kazı çalışmalarımız başladı. Karkamış Koordinatörü Başkanlığı kazısında 3 alan içerisinde çalışmaktayız. Bunlardan bir tanesi burada bulunduğumuz mağara, diğeri Değirmen Genç Osmanlı Erken Cumhuriyet dönemine tarihleniyor. Bir diğeri ise kentin giriş kapılarından bir tanesinde yer alıyor. Burası Karkamış Antik Kenti'nin sur duvarlarının dışarısında kalan doğal bir mağara. Kuzey bölgesinde bulunuyor. Mağaradaki ilk çalışmalar 1912-1915 yılları arasında İngiliz arkeolog Sir Leonard Woolley tarafından yapılmıştır. Mağaranın eski çağdaki ihtiyacına göre batı ve doğu duvarları düzleştirilmiş, basamak sistemleri inşa edilmiştir. Ve bu gördüğünüz olay Tağu Çayı'yla Fırat'la beraber birleşiyor. Bu birleşme sayesinde de aslında buradan bir su temini yapılıp kuyuda tamamen doluyor burası.
Gabriel. Evet, bulduk mu?
Evet, burada.
Vale. Yeah, trovato. Look what he found. It's like the figurine of a horse. It's made of fire clay. It's very common in the Iron Age levels of Karkamış, in other sites of the region. So it has also some applied parts like the eyes and the decoration, the bridle, and also the hairs as well. Unfortunately, is not complete, but sometimes you can find also the rest of the body, and sometimes there is also a horseman on top. It's a nice finding, and usually comes from the Iron Age levels, like so New Hittite and New Assyrian levels. So it's yes, very nice.
Burası Karkamış Türk-İtalyan kazı ekibi, kazı evi. Ekibin antik kent dışında en çok vakit geçirdiği ikinci konum burası. Burası bizim yaşam alanımız. Ekibin konaklama ihtiyacını gideren yer, ekibin boş vakitlerinde dinlenme ihtiyacını giderdiği yer, aynı zamanda yemek yediği yer. Ama burası sadece bizim yaşam alanımız değil. Burası aynı zamanda bizim çalışma alanlarımızdan bir tanesi. Antik kentte bulunan buluntuların araştırma ve belgeleme işlerinin yapıldığı bazı depolarımız ve bazı atölyelerimiz, bazı ofislerimiz bu kazı evi içerisinde yer alıyor. Bunlardan bir tanesi keramik atölyesi. Keramik atölyesinde antik kentteki kazılar sırasında bulunan keramiklerin temizlenmesi, tasnif edilmesi, numaralandırılması, fotoğraflanması gibi işlemler arkeologlar tarafından gerçekleştiriliyor. Aynı zamanda öğrenciler de bu işlemlere bizzat dahil olup burada kazının işleyişi hakkında uygulamalı olarak eğitim alıyorlar. Onun dışında burada bulunan bir diğer ofisimiz çizim ofisi. Belgeleme işlemleri biten keramiklerin teknik çizimleri desinatörler tarafından bu ofiste gerçekleştiriliyor. Ve son olarak bulunan ofislerimizden bir tanesi de restorasyon ofisimiz. Restoratörlerimiz tarafından ihtiyaç olan eserlerin koruma ve onarım çalışmaları restorasyon ofisinde gerçekleştiriliyor.